The scene feels complete in a way that implies recurrence.
The room no longer implies progression or delay. The room appears ready to be observed again.
Continuity replaces variation without announcement. The present moment loses distinction from others. Temporal markers lose relevance when repetition feels exact.
Nothing appears unresolved. Recognition replaces curiosity.
Stability persists without indicating duration.
The scene feels sufficient without asserting finality.
Nothing within the frame suggests a need for alteration.
Nothing suggests a next moment.
Observation no longer produces discovery.
Spatial logic reasserts itself without reference to interruption.
The environment offers closure without explanation.
Visual memory overlaps with live perception.
Temporal reference points begin to slide.
The room behaves like a memory, still forming. The scene feels slightly behind itself.
Orientation settles into a position that discourages further interpretation.
Visual cues reorganize into patterns that no longer invite comparison.
Alignment restores itself without acknowledging prior deviation.
Time no longer asserts a single position within the room. Visual complexity reduces itself without signaling completion.
The present without stretches, without advancing.
Object and environment no longer feel simultaneous.
Light resumes behavior that aligns with expectation rather than explanation.
Conditions resemble stability closely enough to reduce the impulse to question them. The room presents a configuration that feels already known, without indicating when it was last observed.
Cause and effect appear to reconnect without commentary.
Change appears buffered rather than immediate.
The scene gives the impression of having already happened.
The scene appears to wait for itself. Recognition arrives slightly after perception.
Balance returns quietly, without resolving what preceded it.
Time cues begin to disagree quietly. The environment stabilizes into a readable state. The
present feels slightly retrospective.
Effects no longer conclude when their causes end.
Completion no longer follows change immediately.
Distance no longer predicts clarity.
Depth cues quietly invert.
Alignment errors accumulate quietly. The room appears to hold on to a previous moment. More than one moment appears to occupy the same space.
Single sources begin to imply multiple outcomes. Multiple temporal signals begin to coexist without resolution.
Sequence becomes uncertain when cause and effect no longer agree on timing.
Visual responses seem to continue after their cause has passed.
Orientation shifts feel increasingly intentional.
Causal direction becomes uncertain.
The room continues to function, even as its logic becomes harder to trace.
The relationship between objects and their effects begins to feel delayed rather than misaligned. Visual information begins to recycle instead of progressing. Spatial logic bends without fully breaking. Familiar lighting hierarchies lose priority.
Expectation begins to arrive before observation.
Light begins to reference the object rather than its source.
The moment feels present without feeling current.
Separation between form and surface diminishes.
Correspondence between objects and their effects weakens.
The room retains visual memory alongside perception.
Expectation adjusts when familiar gradients reverse.
Object posture begins to register as deliberate.
Directional logic weakens without fully collapsing.
Clarity increases as contrast becomes more defined.
Edges become less distinct under evenly distributed light.
Distance no longer predicts illumination reliably.
Light traces subtle paths across stable surfaces. Brightness settles into positions that resist immediate reasoning. Light behaves almost correctly, yet its direction encourages a brief pause in certainty.
Orientation subtly influences how presence is registered.
Shadow behavior becomes subtly inconsistent with expectation.
Reflections drift in ways that feel slightly unmotivated.
Reflections shift gently with viewing conditions.
Orientation shifts begin to feel noticed rather than incidental.
Illumination appears to favor an unexpected side. Balanced lighting reduces visual effort.
Light organizes itself into patterns without explanation.
Alignment loosens in a way that does not fully explain itself.
Surface cues multiply without clear necessity.
Nothing in the room asks to be examined more closely.
Spatial cues guide interpretation without effort. Shadow length adjusts gradually as daylight progresses. Gradual illumination shifts support a sense of continuity.
Surface contours become legible through restrained reflection.
The room appears prepared for observation, offering a neutral setting that does not immediately invite interpretation.
Brightness distributes itself in a way that feels expected for this time of day.
Diffuse light supports a sense of visual comfort and stability.
Lighting behaves in a way that supports a sense of ordinary physical consistency.
The environment behaves within limits that feel physically reliable.
Object posture can appear variable without suggesting intention.
Shadows adjust gradually, reinforcing expectations about light and space.
Contrast forms naturally where structure interrupts illumination.
Air presence is inferred through light diffusion rather than direct sight.
Objects accept illumination in ways that align with their material properties.
Material textures become readable through consistent interaction with light. Subtle positional corrections rarely register as events. Surface materials respond to light in ways that feel familiar and unremarkable. Minor shifts in alignment often occur without attracting conscious attention.